Jason was actually a recent guest on the VoxGig Fireside podcast, talking about developer relations. I got to put all my questions to him. You get to do that now as well. You should also check out Jason's rather impressive personal website, jasoncensier.com. So Jason, StCyr.com. You share a great amount of thoughts on all sorts of topics. It's really wonderful and eclectic and useful. Ethics and trust and video publishing and tabletop role-playing games. It's all marvelous stuff. Bit of a rabbit hole. In your own words, you've come to us through the worlds of Smalltalk, Java applets, classic ASP, ASP.NET, web forms, PL, SQL, web services, and basically everything else. And now you do developer relations, which is marvelous. And you're coming to us from Canada. And your work takes 3 time zones, I believe. So thank you so much for being here today. I know you're a busy guy. Wonderful stuff. All right, Jason, let's do the screen share. Let's see what happens. Let's get started.
Yeah. Hopefully everybody can see the screen share going on. I always love that intro about like mentioning small talk. I feel that's a way to like say, yes, I'm old, if you have heard of that before. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we go through as managers in DevRel, trying to bring a team up, to kind of level them up. So one of the things that I know I face as a challenge is, how do I get my team to go to that next level? A lot of this is very similar to the concept of your favorite tabletop RPG and adventurers, which I happen to do. You know, there's the concept of, you've got a bunch of people, they've got experience, they've got skill sets, they got a specific role in your party, and you get to be the one who guides them along on that story. And so that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about how do we make that guide. Now, I'm going to just do a little switch over here on my view so that I can see my notes here. One of the things that is very important for me here is the concept of going between different levels, and the fact we have a limited time here. So I'm going to focus in on going from intermediate to senior, and then doing that senior to principal. So kind of going up in one level. But what if you choose to go in a different track, go into the manager? So I figure if we talk about through those 3 things, that'll be pretty good for today. And there's probably a little bit of context that would be good to have. One of the things that I do at my team is fill gaps in the organization. StCyr is not huge, but it's big enough that we have dedicated documentation and support and training and things like that. So for me, we've defined DevRel at StCyr as focusing on 3 key areas. The community programs, which is a lot about our community platforms, nurturing the community, our MVP programs, which are like ambassador programs. Developer advocacy, where we're talking more about how do we become product experts and build trust and get people excited about what's happening. And then the idea of developer experience, where we look at what are the types of things like starter kits or guides or walkthroughs, or what are the ways that we can make it better to work with our suite of products. So let's dive into this here. Given that context, how do we go up this? I was given a very good analogy to this, which was around the concept of rope. So you have the idea that at different levels, you have different capabilities. So for example, at an intern level, they might be just out of school, just learning about the concept of rope. Maybe they get some basic knots. But once you get to that junior level, you really, those basic knots, you're starting to get shown the more advanced knots. But once you get that intermediate stage, you know your knots. Like, you're an expert on this. You're telling people about how great knots are. And you're starting to learn about rope quality, what different ropes can do, rope strength. And you get into this next senior level where you're not so concerned about the knots. That's such an expertise of yours. You want to know how to make rope. You want to get expertise in that. And then you become that principal level where you know more about the concept of rope than anybody else in the world. And if I map this onto some of the stuff with developer relations, like an intern might be coming in and learning about what our products are. Maybe they're learning about how to do video editing or write technical articles. But at junior level, might know how to do those basic things and start working with others on projects and starting to understand what developer advocacy means or community support. Then when we get into the intermediate stage where we're talking about owning an expertise, you're being the voice of a product, you're really coming into your own, but you're not quite there to be able to lead others, but you know your stuff. And then that senior level, now you're trying to reach down to help the other members of the team. How do they get better at what they're doing and really taking lead on projects? And finally, at a principal level, I see these people as more strategic, that they're able to kind of come in and define what are the priorities that we should be looking at. They try to improve the team. They understand what's going on in the industry, and they're able to really have a big impact both in the team, in the company, and then outside the company. So let's dive into the first one. And the first one I want to take a look at is that intermediate to senior jump. This can be a little bit challenging for some people. It's the first time where you're really being really challenged. It's not just a years of experience thing. You actually have to hit certain levels of things. Now, there are basically 4 big capabilities I look for in people trying to make this jump. So the first one I might look at is the concept of mentoring and coaching. Are they able to go through and look at somebody else, identify how I can help them get better, and they're thinking more than just about themselves, but about others. A next step might be, how do we define key results? So going beyond doing the work, but actually driving the work to get done, maybe trying to lead a project, something like that. Then we talk about collaboration. So I like to see, can they start getting the team to work together, bring in more than just like a one-person team, but work with others, maybe even working with others outside the team. And then looking at wanting to have a little bit more independence. Am I able to step back a little bit and let them run with some things so that I'm not quite as in the weeds with them every day, and able to let them run and take a little bit on that, and that they're confident, they know what they're going to do. So how do we give opportunities? We want to be the Gandalf to their Bilbo. We want to put a path in front of them so that they can go and do that. So here are some tactics that I've kind of come up with that, they don't work for everybody, but maybe something in here might help for you. If I look at mentoring and coaching, I want to be able to do things like onboarding. If we have a new member in the team, this is a great chance for someone to show that they can start teaching other people and getting them to understand what the processes are. If we happen to have junior members of a team, that's a great chance where we could start collaborating on a project together and having them learn how to bring somebody else up and learn new skills. If we don't have junior members on the team, and that happens, then you can go and have them teach about their expertise. They're going to be really good at something, right? Maybe it's about some particular JavaScript framework, or maybe they really know how to use a particular tool. They can then go showcase that to the other team members and help other people learn. That's a great way to do it too. And helping the community. There's always new people in the community who are learning for the first time. And that's a great chance to go and flex that muscle and start learning how to bring somebody up and get them more confident. Now, if we look at the execution level, it's kind of the easy mode here for me as a manager, because I have tons of projects that we need to get done. So I am more than willing to offload a project to someone else and have them run it, and I don't have to project manage it. Not everybody's always ready for that, but it does give a lot of expertise in how do you work with others, how do you motivate them, how do you figure out what's going on, look at dependencies and stuff, manage stakeholders. It's a good way to learn a lot of those skills. For the people who aren't ready for that yet, running something smaller like a process might be better. So for example, we have a publishing flow. We have content that's defined in our backlog, stuff that we're going to be working on next, and it goes into review and publishing, all that. I have somebody on my team that I've delegated down so that they can start learning this stuff, and they run that process now. So instead of me having to worry about it, somebody else is following up with people, making sure we're not getting stuck. And that's a good way to learn some of the skills without going into the full project mode. All right, if we talk about collaboration, initially people are very safe in the team, right? The team's got your back. They're not wanting you to fail, right? But we want them to leave the bubble a little bit. So this is where we want to find some kind of project that they can work on across teams. That might be like an FAQ or a starter kit or something that involves other parts of the organization. Have them start having to pull these people together. They have to keep on top of stuff, look for dependencies. They have to figure out who the stakeholders are. They have to start making decisions on their own and manage all of what's going on. So there's a lot of stuff in collaborating with other functions that starts making you have that kind of next level. Another thing that we have is the whole independence piece. So independence is great. I don't have to do as much coaching on a particular type of task, opens up more time, but it can be kind of tricky to get there, right? So it has to be more of a gradual change. I might start with something like, here are our priorities for the next half. We've got some high level goals. Can you figure out what the tasks are that we need to go and do on this, and let them start driving it that way? My colleague Thomas has this concept of I do, we do, you do in a shadowing perspective, where I might start with it with them shadowing me, seeing how I go about making those decisions. Then we work on it together. And then finally letting them run with me in a review. And then I can finally kind of step back. That allows us to gradually get into that stage. Okay, so that's talking about the intermediate to senior. But what if they want to keep going down that independent contributor path? So management is not the only choice. You can go up. And when I talk about principal, this has a lot of different names at different organizations. It might be a director or a staff or fellow or ninja, whatever it happens to be. I'm talking about independent contributors, but higher than senior. So your next step up. So one of the things that I look for here is driving strategy. So they're seen as more of a strategic person. They're looking at objectives. It's not about a project, but maybe a program or an entire area of the team or something, some kind of thing like that. Another area that I would be looking at is, what do they do to make an impact beyond our company? How do they get involved with the DevRel community? How do they start helping out in the industry and helping others? That'd be something I'd be looking for from them. Another piece is improving the team. Are they keeping on top of the latest trends? Do they know what's happening in the DevRel industry? How can they bring stuff back and make our team better? Not just making the suggestions, but actually driving us to get better. All right, so we've got a veteran person here. We got to put a path in front of them so that they get even further. So how do we do that? One of the things for driving strategy that I like to do is to give a program area. So my team has those kind of 3 different areas, and I can give someone ownership over an entire area, and they can make the decisions about it. They can start working with me to define the goals. Initially, it might be like involving them in my decisions so that we do that, I do, you do kind of flow. Budgets is another great thing to start talking about, because this is the first time they might be providing that type of feedback. Like, here's the stuff we really need. And also getting into steering calls. So there's this kind of upper management tier where people in enterprises like to align, called alignment meetings. And there's a bunch of people and they all talk about what's going on. It's a higher level. Getting people that are going to this next level involved in that, seeing the types of conversations that happen, the types of information you have to be able to share, how to not get in the weeds all the time. That's pretty good to get them seen as that strategic person. All right, if we talk about impact beyond the company, I think things like this, like going out to a meetup, is like an excellent way where you can start connecting with the community at events. Start advocating for developer relations itself. Like, instead of writing a blog about the latest framework, how do you talk about how you do developer relations? Maybe it's about getting in with the community and participating in online communities like the Developer Relations Collective. And how can you help out? You're used to helping out people with your product. How do you go and then change that to help people with developer relations? I think that's a great way for them to go and start having that type of impact. Now, wrapping up this kind of principle level is going into improvements. As they've probably been in the team a few years, they're used to giving feedback. They've probably been telling you about what improvements that should be done with the team already, expecting you to run with it. And now this is a chance to give them the opportunity to like define what those are, but then which are the most important, which ones are going to give us the best return, which have too much effort, it's not worth it, making those decisions, right? And how do they get other people on board, get them excited to want to do this, that kind of change management process. That allows us to really get into a very senior level of thinking in the team and much more strategic. All right, so far we've been talking about going up kind of straight ladder. Now I want to talk about, what if somebody wants to go to a different path? So if we go back to the analogy of rope making, right? Someone's gotten better and better at rope making and rope tying and all that. This is not about that. Now you might not need to think about, how do I make sure we have enough rope makers? How do we make sure that people are learning to tie the right knots and they have what they need to succeed at us being the best rope company ever? That is what you need to think about yet. It's a totally different set of skills. So there are a couple of different things that I look for and I try to open up opportunities for. One of them is career coaching. So someone at a senior level, they might be mentoring someone on how to do that role better. Maybe they're becoming a better community manager. Now I want them to think about, okay, how would you take that person to their next role? What are the steps and gaps? And start thinking of that. A second piece would be around prioritization. So this comes into, like, they might be used to prioritizing tasks, but how do they think above that level and start prioritizing investments and programs and projects and kind of going up at that higher level? If we think about one of the most tricky ones is status reporting. Everyone likes to do, your Scrum calls of, I did this, we did this, I'm going to do this next. Here are my blockers. But how do you report that up? How do you get all that gritty stuff away and start reporting at a higher level? Let them know things are on time, or these are the major blockers. That's the kind of stuff where you have to be able to abstract it out and collect stuff together. And finally, everybody loves performance reviews, sitting down for that mandated, whatever is quarterly for you or annual. We all know what it's like to sit in the seat and be reviewed and get that performance approval. This is about going to the other side and letting them see what it looks like to evaluate someone else. So let's start talking about, what can we do, put in front of these people so that they become the best manager they possibly could be, or at least start learning some of these new skills. One, when we talk about career coaching, is talking about the other team, just learning to think about the other members in your team. What do they like to do? What are their strong suits? Where are their weaknesses? What do we have on the list of upcoming projects? And start thinking, who would be good to work on this project because they're really good at it? But then thinking, well, who wants to learn more about this? Who would this project be an opportunity for like one of these other things that we were doing, like trying to get someone up to intermediate or something? That is where we need to be starting to think about the other members of the team. And similarly, we have the concept of prioritization. We're trying to think about all the members of the team, all the projects. We want to get this person to learn how to make those decisions. I think, again, shadowing is a really good example. Bringing them in when you're making those decisions. They get to kind of see how you go about defining the goals. They get involved in presenting options. You can start saying, hey, here's a bunch of things we could possibly do next half. What do you think are the biggest ones that we should tackle? And that's a new skill that they probably haven't had to think about before. And eventually, as you're doing this kind of migration of responsibility, you can kind of define the area that they're going to own and start having them define those priorities, having them provide it to you for review, and eventually go into the goals level, and they can own the whole thing for you from that point. Now, coming back to status reporting. So this is a tricky one because in a lot of bigger organizations, it's very hierarchical how you do reporting. But the general goal is nobody wants to hear about the bugs you're working on or the latest video you made or what people are complaining about in the community. At an upper management level, they need it rolled up. Like, what are the big fish to fry? What is the thing that I need to know about? So we need to get them to learn how to start doing that. One way I like to do it is identify an area for them to run status meetings. So instead of you running the call, have them lead the call. Have them get used to gathering that information from the team and looking at it holistically. Then having them report it to you lets them learn how to like bring that into a shorter version that's more relevant for your level. Another one may not be available to everybody is the concept of like an internal newsletter, or maybe there's some kind of like department email that goes out. If you can have them kind of evangelizing what the group is doing in there, they start learning not only about how to manage up, but how to manage out. And they start learning about these different pieces of messaging where you get people excited to see what you're working on. Okay. And as we go into performance reviews, so these are tricky because it involves a lot of like very sensitive stuff. We're talking about people's careers here. You don't necessarily want to like just say, okay, you review this person right now the first time around. So what I like to do is say, I'll bring them along for the process so they can see how I do the performance reviews and get them to provide me some feedback. Just like, how do you think someone's doing on this project, right? Or do you see any issues? Or did somebody do something really great? They can start thinking about how people are performing, get them at that level. So then I'm using that as input to what I'm doing, but they're not responsible for actually reviewing somebody. Then I can bring them in and actually take them through the whole process so they can see what it is, the tools I have to use, the steps I need to go through just to do a performance review on someone. And finally, getting out to a team level, because it's not just about the individual. I want to see who's standing out, who's going to that next level, or maybe taking on the more challenging work. I want all of that going. So being able to bring them along that process gets them thinking about those things. Okay, so I realize that probably going over time here, but just quickly, as we look at all of those things I just talked about, the inevitable question is going to be, are they ready to go to the next level yet? And this is the hardest part because there's no metric, there's no 100% completion, like there's no grade you can hit. You have to kind of look at it and say, yep, the things that we need right now in a person in that position, they're strong in, or do they have weaknesses that are going to cause an issue in that area? And that's kind of the decision you have to make. All right, so let's wrap this up with a very important thing to remember, and that is that you know your team better than anyone else. You know yourself better than anyone else. So you can do this. If you are already thinking about what does it take to go to the next level, what does it take to get there, you're doing the right thing. One of the things we need to do, identify a next step. Where is it we're going from here to there? Then we will need to look at gaps. What is the path? What do we need to do in order for that to be a reality? As a manager, we got to figure out, how do the opportunities arrive? How do we put that path for the adventure for them? And then we got to make sure they're ready. Like, again, it's not 100%. They don't have to check every box. Are they ready for what we need as a company right now? And then finally, go give the high five, get that promotion, congratulate your teammate. This is where they get to level up, right? So if you can get through this, this is what you need to do. All right. So that was the fun part. And now's the even more fun part where we get to talk about questions.